Here's my concern, Hans. If this isn't done right, if it's not done by the book, not about counting every vote, it's about upholding the Constitution, upholding state laws, decision by state legislatures, and so forth. If this isn't done right this time, even though it impacts this presidential election, we're going to have a disaster every 4 years. And it's going to get worse and worse with the litigation, with courts interfering with state legislatures, with violations of deadlines, with other parties not being able to be present when there's counts taking place. This stuff needs to be resolved now, does it not?
Yeah, it does. Look, I would compare this. I mean, to give you a simple comparison. Look, everyone would agree that in the middle of the Super Bowl, one of the coaches for one of the teams should not go to the referee and say, listen, we need to change the rules applying to the current game. And that's exactly what has happened this year in the election process. We had lawsuits filed all over the country, and we had judges, both state court judges and federal judges, trying to change the rules, not just before the election, but in the middle of the election when the voting had already started early and through absentee ballots across the country, and relaxing, quite frankly, the needed rules to maintain the security, for example, of absentee ballots. And that is just not the way you conduct an election. It's dangerous.
It's appalling. There's really two things here. Number one, the U.S. Supreme Court so far has failed to uphold the federal Constitution, and in doing so, put an end to some of these activities that are going on that benefit one party against another. It's really appalling. And until the Supreme Court steps in and puts its foot down and upholds Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2, and upholds it without any ambiguity, this is going to continue, and it's going to raise questions about elections. But here's the other problem, or the second problem, Hans, and that is this. If you can't trust the numbers that are coming out in one state or another, or in one city or another, then the legitimacy of the presidency is on the line each and every time, is it not?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Yeah, and so we're all being told now to unite, I'm very troubled by the strategy that was put in place here. It's obviously a long-term strategy by the Democrat Party, and I'm also very troubled by the fact there was almost no reporting on it up till a few weeks ago, or maybe even a few days ago. And even now, there's almost no reporting on it, the effect that this had on the outcome of the election. No? No,
I mean, look, you're exactly right. And just keep in mind, Mark, that all of the measures that were asked for in those lawsuits to basically get rid of the safety protocols for absentee ballots, all of them were in H.R. 1. That was the first bill that Nancy Pelosi introduced in the House 2 years ago when they took over the House. That bill would have put all of these terrible measures in place, forced them on states across the country. So this is not just a short-term strategy. This is a long-term strategy. They want to change federal law to micromanage and take over the running of elections by the states, and do it in a very bad way.
And the amazing thing is, in this provision of the Constitution we keep talking about,
right,
there's only one body mentioned as the body that has the say, the beginning say and the final say, and it's the state legislature, and they're being pushed aside for the state courts. They're being pushed aside by the boards of elections. They're being pushed aside by the governors. And then when you dare to raise it and say, wait a minute, full stop, the state legislature gets to decide how the electors are chosen, you're accused of trying to oppress, suppress, racism, disenfranchisement, and all the usual pablum that we get from the left. Now, on another topic, but it's very important, we now see individuals saying we need to keep a list of people who have been associated with this administration, almost an enemies list. You've seen it by AOC. You've seen it by Jennifer Rubin. What do you make of this?
Well, in fact, Jennifer Rubin put out a tweet saying not only there should be a blacklist of everyone who's associated with the campaign, she also wants a blacklist of anyone who talks about what we've talked about today, which is if you talk about election fraud, you should be on that blacklist. And she calls for anyone like that to be exiled from society and to not be given a job in the government, in academia, and in private industry. I'm just wondering, have they picked the location yet for the gulag or detention camp where I'm going to be sent for talking about this kind of thing?
And she, of course, is a whack job, but nonetheless a columnist, in my opinion, for the Washington Post, where I'm sure she'll be forever. Why don't they pick some of those sites where FDR rounded up Japanese Americans and Americans of Japanese descent? I suppose they could send us there. I know they loved FDR. Hans von Spakovsky, I want to thank you, my friend, and be well.
Thanks for having me.